Hello and welcome to episode 121 of Beyond the Brick. I'm Joshua Hanlon.
And I'm Matthew Kay.
And this episode of Beyond the Brick is brought to you by BrickFest Live. BrickFest Live will be held at the Meadowlands Expo Center in New Jersey, July 11th through 13th. BrickFest Live is a public event with a focus on hands-on attractions such as the BrickFest Theater, where you can watch some of the best LEGO brick films and animations on the internet. More info can be found at brickfestlive.com. I'll make sure to include a link to their website in the description of this video as well. Now, joining us on the show this week is Aaron Van Cleave, and you might know him on Flickr or Mock Pages, Eurobricks, and Hypernity, so he has kind of all the bases covered there as far as posting his photos online. He is 15 years old and a student, and he has had his work blogged on the Brothers Brick and other LEGO blogs, so it's great to have you on the show, Aaron.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for the honor.
No problem. Now, like I mentioned, you post your photos on a lot of different sites online. I'd be interested to hear. I don't think we've discussed this with a guest before. Hypernity is kind of the site that became popular with LEGO fans after Flickr started messing everything up for people. What have you thought of that so far compared to Flickr?
Well, it's an interesting site. It's actually very nice. We had expected it not to have notes, which is one of the main reasons why I tried it out in the first place. Because Flickr had notes, and almost no other website had that, but for some reason Hypernity has them too. So that's a very nice detail they have there.
It's like Hypernity is like a clone of Flickr from like its old days, right?
But I don't do much on Hypernity anymore because Forrest Feller, one of my contacts, he posted a very nice sort of cheat. It's an add-on you can use for your browser to trick Flickr into thinking that your browser is too old to run the update. So I'm back to old Flickr, and I prefer it to Hypernity. It's much better, but Hypernity is there in case I ever need it.
I've heard of that little switch around. It's like the user agent switcher or something like that, right? Where you kind of, it's like it's like Firefox 15 for Windows or something, right? Like an older, definitely.
I'm not sure how it works, but I haven't gone spammed yet, so I don't care.
Yeah, it works. That's all I know.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's always nice to have a backup, like you were saying, in case, Flickr, it does seem to gradually be getting worse or whatever with every update, so I know a lot of people found that it just wasn't working for them anymore and looked for other sites. So do you post all your work on Hypernity, or just a little bit as you try to keep it updated, or how do you work that out?
Well, I post pretty much everything on Flickr, and occasionally I'll go on Hypernity and try to post something there. But there's a limit to how many photos you can post on Hypernity, and I suppose I could upload them all within like a month if I wanted to, but I don't really see what the point is, because I have all my photos backed up on my computer, so because they're not too big, so it doesn't take up too much space.
Sure, so that works well for you. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of the show you're 15 years old, so if you want to give us a little bit of your history with LEGO, how you first started building with it, have you gotten it for, birthdays and Christmases and things like that throughout the years?
That's pretty much the only way I've gotten it, because, just this year, I think I can get a job now, but I haven't managed to get one yet, so...
The LEGO store won't hire you until you're 18 now. Just keep that in mind, I just want to let you know.
So if you're looking for a job at the LEGO store, you have to wait a few more years.
Mm-hmm.
And that's quite a few, actually.
Yeah. So then, when do you have like a first memory with LEGO, or first set you built?
It was pretty blissful for me, but looking back, it's probably kind of idiotic because one of the first sets I got was Jack Stone, and I liked it because it was yellow. I don't really like yellow sets that much anymore, but at any rate, it was Legos. I was like, oh, this is so fun. It has these weird Lego people. They're not as good as the ordinary Lego people, but whatever. And I couldn't take their hair off. I'm like, what's with that? But then after that, I started accumulating more, and those stayed in my collection for almost like 5 years. But I never had a dark age, which is kind of nice. I was always building. And it did gradually progress. One of the first things I built was this kind of scorpion where I used minifigure legs linked together as legs with the scorpion. And I think when I was like 8, I sold all my Legos for some reason. And I didn't have that many. It only filled like maybe like 2 bins about this big. So I sold them all and I got some more. And then over the years, I like I would sell old ones for new ones, and I regret that now because all those old pieces, and especially ones from Space Police 2, 3, all kinds of good ones. But at any rate, I stopped selling them now, because once you're into mocking this way, you want to save as many as you can to be able to build bigger. And the bigger the collection is, the less limited your palette. But sometimes it's good to have a limited palette.
Yeah, that can be true. Now, as you discovered the online community, what were the first sites you interacted with online? Was it Flickr or some Lego blogs, or how did that work?
Somehow or other, I managed to find my way on Flickr, and I don't know how I found that. But one of the first Lego builders whose work I saw was Too Much Caffeine and 2MC. And I was just like whizzing through all his creations. I'm like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And it was really amazing. There was Snot builds, there was microscale. The really impressive ones were the Star Wars microscale. Steampunk like everywhere you looked. And I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's an artist with Legos. I'm like, I want to do that kind of stuff. And then another person I saw was Jovian, who does mostly fantasy stuff. And I think it's kind of interesting that the first people I found builds in genre that are usually ones that I don't really venture into. And then one other memorable experience I had before I joined the community was I found Nan and Zhang's and Tyler Clate's Containment. That big one, it was in Nan and Zhang's. It wasn't Flickr, it wasn't like mock pages or Brickshelf or anything. It was some kind of photo sharing set, but I'm like, oh my gosh. I was like, how big is that? Is that like, how big? And yeah, I freaked out. And shortly afterward, I started building stuff. And it was pretty pathetic. And then I got better.
Yes, and you do have a lot of great builds now. It's been interesting to see them over the years here. Now, I'd be interested as a teenage fan of Lego, a TFOL, in a mostly kind of adult online community. What, in your opinion, over the years, have you found are some of the pros and cons of being a TFOL in a mostly AFOL community?
The pros, obviously, is that as an adult, adults have more responsibilities. They usually have jobs, taxes, mortgage.
All those fun things.
Oh, yes, excellent. And TFLs don't have that. But, one of the popular stereotypes among TFLs is that all AFLs are just, like, their pockets are bursting with money and they have all this money, they're so rich. And I still actually think that's true, but, yes. Some other differences, the adults, I noticed actually sometimes, if they have like a degree in engineering, and I'm surprised how many do, but you shouldn't be surprised because Lego is the core essence of it is engineering. When they have like some experience with that, it helps their building too.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, yeah. So you can see some of that engineering in it there as well. But that's a good point. I'm sure there are some adults who disagree with you as far as the pockets bursting with money.
But that is a very good point, though, because I do feel like I respect builders such as yourself in your position, because when you are an AFOL, you're say you're working a $100,000 a year job, and you have plenty of money to spend on a hobby. I mean, it's very easy to just place an order on Bricklink for any part you need. But for someone like yourself, you have to like use what you have. So that scarcity.
Yes, actually, some of the builds here that I've made, usually one of the main factors that I factor in is, do I have enough pieces? And for a lot of them, usually the bigger ones, I will try to, to the best of my ability, schedule some way to get some Legos in a specific capacity. Bricklink is like the best tool ever. And I have some stores I can go to that sell vintage Lego bricks that are hard to get nowadays. So kind of like Bricklink, only you can pick up the Legos and say, oh, these ones are in good condition, these ones aren't. And, no. So, yeah, I usually have to work around what pieces I do or don't have. And I'm also constantly taking old stuff apart to make new stuff. These are the only things I have constructed right now. Just still, I have a lot of them constructed. But.
Definitely. I think that's very good, very good.
Mm-hmm. Now, I think we'll talk about some of your builds now, because as you were just showing behind you, you've got a lot of really cool builds there and tons of stuff posted on your Flickr page. I'll make sure to include a link to your Flickr page in the description so people can check that out. A lot of really awesome builds over there. The first build I wanted to talk about was one of your somewhat kind of space builds that you've worked on here, and I think you actually have this build still built. Is that right?
I do actually. It's right here. And I'm actually surprised I haven't taken it apart yet, but I haven't. I have it right here. And disengage it, and it's held in place by a single Lord of the Rings ring, which is very useful. If you can take it, there it is. And that connects to the snot work and keeps it in place.
Okay.
Yes. And this was one of my first forays into customizing. Besides, you know, the accidental, you break an axle and fly over it and then use it in some way and do something. But this one, I used a Chima Speedor press right here. It's one of the evil ones, and it was in can't remember what set it was in, but I just used a pencil eraser, and it took a couple hours, but I got all the print off, and then I managed to incorporate it into this, and it fits pretty well, even though the shading is kind of off. It's like a different shade of blue.
Okay, but you still use a little customizing technique there. That's interesting. Now, I don't know if I've heard of that before. So you used a pencil eraser. You found that worked well?
I know most people use Brasso, but the corrosive properties kind of scare me off. Like, even if it only takes off one atom layer of Lego, it's like, it takes off an atom layer of the Lego. You don't want that to happen. So, yeah, and I also...
And what could that be doing to your lungs, right? Breathing that in? Oh.
I don't know. But I found a less used way is you just take a simple pencil eraser, and if you apply enough pressure to that, it will literally take off the print. And that kind of surprised me, because you wash it, you use soap, all these things, but a pencil eraser takes it off.
So that is a cool technique, though, and I think it was nice that you were able to make such a great build, you know, using that customizing technique. So then I guess you don't consider yourself a total purist then. You like to take break the boundaries a little bit there?
I used to be, and some of the... I try to, like, keep certain rules for myself. Like, I'm never going to cut Legos, although I recently had to almost break that one by cutting some Lego netting. That made me sad, but, you know, you never want to paint them. That's a big one. Haven't broken that yet. And taking print off, that's not a huge problem. I actually did another experiment somewhere where I took the print off a torso for use in another mock. But besides that, I haven't done much else.
Sure.
What about a little Sharpie?
No.
No? Good.
No Sharpie? That's outside the boundaries right now for you?
Leave the Sharpies at home.
That counts as painting.
Okay, so yeah, none of that right now, but it is interesting to see the pencil technique at least, so you can make some cool parts that way. And another build that we wanted to talk about was this build. It's called Never Insult a Wizard, and this is an interesting little build, kind of a castle fantasy themed build here. That I thought you had some nice snot techniques in it. So is there a storyline behind this build?
It's actually a pretty interesting one, and I'm afraid I'm going to ramble again, but I did post in the description of that particular build that I had built that. One of my first builds on Flickr was Never Insult a Wizard, and it was literally a 4x4 plate with some tiles on it, and then there was like a guy who looked almost exactly like the wizard in that photo, only had a cowl and was dressed totally in black, and he was just shooting wizard sparks, you know, the zappy piece they use, at this other guy, and one of his legs was turning into a chicken leg. He had a scorpion on his head, and then there was a chainsaw cutting him in half. And the photography, of course, was also terrible, because I was using an iPhone back then, too, but I'd never heard of Lightbox. So I was like, but I just love the concept of that, though. So I was like, I want to recreate this now. And I did. And I liked how it came out. With Mixelize.
Yes, yeah, you got the Mixelize going on there and stuff, so definitely very interesting. And you also got even a little bit, is that a little cheese slope mosaic work going on in the background there?
Yeah, I feel like I don't do that often enough. I have just enough cheese slopes to pull off the occasional mosaic, and I just managed to get a whole lot of olive cheese based on, you know, peer pressure from Paul Vermeesh and all those other people who are like, oh yeah,
oh yeah, the olive cheese group there. I was just seeing their builds at Brickworld. They had their Princess Bride layout, and yeah, that was interesting. They had all their olive cheese going on there.
Yep. Yeah, hopefully be able to do some more mosaics in the future. They're fun.
Definitely. Now, you mentioned in passing a little bit there that you use an iPhone to photograph your builds, and I thought that was interesting because, you know, a lot of people in the LEGO community, it's a big discussion always, you know, what type of camera they have and that sort of thing. So you using an iPhone, what do you find that you can still get really good quality with that?
it really depends on where you're taking photos. And this is 8 megapixels. That's not terrible. I actually have a digital camera that's fairly old that's 10 megapixels, but the thing has so many controls, I can't figure out how to use it. And all the photos come out kind of pinkish, so I actually prefer this. It's very easy to use.
And I've also heard people say that even though the iPhone doesn't have the best camera in the world, the fact that it has like a really good processor, it can take an image that might not be like as high a megapixel count as another, but it looks better because of the way it was processed and all. And like you said, it's easy to use. It definitely very, very good tool.
Yeah, and I use a light box, and that's definitely helpful because it diffuses the light, gets rid of glare and stuff. Except on very round creations, which I've had some trouble with recently.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's definitely interesting that you have found that the iPhone works then. So I guess definitely getting some good budget tips here for those T-Falls out there who might not have a lot of money. There's definitely some ways you can work around it. You know, using an iPhone to photograph builds and stuff like that as a great way to, because your photographs still look really great. Looking over your Flickr feed and everything, definitely I would never have guessed that you use like an iPhone or something that would not be a super high quality camera, but it looks great.
Besides the iPhone, I think I spent like under $50 for the whole photo setup. It's like paper, the light box was $35. That was the single most expensive thing. And then I just used some heavy books, they're Lego related books, to prop up the paper. You know, you have some lamps on the side, and they were all real cheap. You got them from Home Depot or whatever. It's not too expensive.
Oh, so you just use like kind of like construction site lamps? Is that what you're?
I have one right here. I mean, it's like $8.
Okay.
Oh, cheap.
Oh, that's really cool. Awesome. Very nice.
So that works well for you. Definitely. Awesome. And so now, do you edit your photos on the iPhone, or do you do much editing to them before you upload them?
The iPhone, despite its surprisingly good photo, the editing is terrible. I mean, you can crop it, but the cropping is ridiculous. I recommend highly. I know there's a lot of people who use GIMP, but I recommend this program called Paint.net, and the net is like all caps for some reason. But it's it's ridiculously good. It's almost like Photoshop. It has layers. It's very easy to use, and I'm not sure whether that's just me saying that because I've had some past training in Photoshop, or whether just, it's really easy, but it's very, very comprehensive. You can do all kinds of stuff with it, and I've found some add-ons that people designed for it, and that enhances it. You can outline stuff, use feather that you can only find in Photoshop. That helps edit stuff, especially when I'm doing space scenes and spaceships and stuff.
Okay, so a nice tool there. I'll make sure to link to that in the description as well, so people can check that out. Make sure we'll get that link from you and put that in there. So if you're interested in a Photoshop type editing tool there, you can get that as well. Now, another build that I thought was interesting as I was looking through your feed was this build that it's called Ruins and has some more really cool work from you. I love the way you did the ruins with the purple there as well. So is there a story behind this?
Well, after within 2 BrickLink orders, I managed to acquire a bunch of purple dishes, which are my pride and joy. And I just love them so much. And I was like, I need to build a spaceship with these dishes. And so I did, and that's really all the story there is to it. And besides that, there's a couple techniques that I've been playing around with that were unrelated till that point, like putting vines underneath rocks to get that kind of effect, using this sort of technique right here to get like kind of an axe. I still have a figure on me, and a couple other techniques like that, because I had acquired some old hinge joints that you can see between the stabilizer.
Kind of like the finger hinges almost, right?
Yeah, the finger hinges. I had acquired some of them. Found them very useful.
Definitely. Completely different function than like the click hinges you can get now, It's like you can do a lot of different things with them.
Especially the rotted ones. I have something using them right now. As you can see, some kind of mech.
Is that like a chicken walker kind of leg you got going there?
Yeah, something like that. But
awesome. Yeah, good stuff.
Very nice. And yeah, something interesting about these builds, you always use a cool color palette and then always different kinds of techniques. Like that minifig there has is that like what would usually be like a skateboarder helmet or something on backwards, and stuff like that is really interesting build style that I always like from you.
That's indeed a skateboarder helmet, and I've seen so many APOC builds using skateboarder helmets, hard suits, all kinds of stuff, and I'm like, well, I don't do much of that, although I probably should occasionally, but you can still use these, and I did find that kind of useful.
Mm-hmm. So with this kind of interesting build style, a lot of cool colors you use and stuff like that, do you draw inspiration from any particular, anywhere online, TV shows, movies, anything like that, or where do you get some of your creative inspiration from for these builds?
Well, Star Wars fan. I don't build a lot of Star Wars, but, the spaceships they have there, they're very realistic. Like, obviously Star Wars isn't realistic, but the spaceships seem feasible, especially if you're saying, space doesn't have any air, so it doesn't matter what shape they are. But, don't watch a lot of Star Trek, do anything like that. I don't really have a whole lot of sources of inspiration. Do try to, find nature. There's all kinds of good shapes there. It's just really a nice source of inspiration. Besides that, I usually just kind of have to, conceptualize something and then use the shapes and the pieces.
Okay, so you just let the pieces kind of guide the design a little bit as you work it out in your mind and work on the build.
Oh, one thing to note though, this is based off a past build. It was like the concept of putting the dishes close next to each other, like so, and then getting some slopes to jut out from the side to make sort of like almost a teardrop shape. It was based off a past build that I did a while ago, and yeah, that's just kind of a similar concept, but this one was a lot more popular than that one.
Okay, so this one found a little wider audience. That's always neat. And another build that I thought was cool here as well is your Colonial living unit. And this is kind of another space build here, kind of on I guess this would be a distant planet, maybe a little home base setup. So this is a really cool build. You incorporated your purple in there as well. A lot of the is that lime green studs coming there, and then a nice little kind of base going on there. So was there any? What's your favorite technique from this build?
Man, I don't know. I put a lot in, just random stuff I had lying around. Mm-hmm. But oh man, I'll try to highlight one thing. Okay, you see at the entry of the portal, you see that hook from the Shelob set? It's in dark red.
Okay, yeah.
I've managed to fit antenna from Galaxy Squad into the little holes in there, and they fit perfectly. And it's mostly just a matter of friction since the Galaxy Squad antenna are kind of rubbery, and I kind of like it. I mean, it's more alien than the rest of the building, but I was like, I just have to put that in there. I'm never going to find another chance to feasibly fit that in something where it'll make sense.
That is an interesting technique. That's really cool. Yeah, so you're able to fit the antenna in the little holes of the hook there. Very nice. So then, is this the green studs there? Is that another one of your favorite colors? Do you like to use that a lot?
Lime green, I like it, but I don't like doing color schemes based entirely around it because not only are they for some reason kind of difficult for me to photograph, but they just have this, if it's all lime green, it's almost sickening to look at. It kind of makes me feel sick.
And what colors do you think green works well with? I always struggle with that. Do you have an opinion yourself?
I use lime green.
Like lime green
actually goes well. Yeah, it would. I haven't. Well, yeah, I have used it with purple, as you can see.
Yeah.
It actually, they kind of balance each other out very well because purple and yellow are complementary colors, but lime green is so close to yellow that they kind of they blend well together without clashing like yellow and purple would.
That's a good point. Interesting.
And then for Galaxy Squad, they use it with dark red a lot, and it's very effective because dark red's kind of dark. And green and red are also complementary colors. And so the dark and redness of dark red, and then the lime and the lightness of lime green, they also complement each other well too.
Yeah, these are good points. And then these are all problems that I'm sure Lego builders 20, 30 years ago would never have to deal with. The color palette of Lego, it evolves so rapidly, right? It's amazing.
Yeah, I was digging through an old box of Lego ones that a relative had, and they haven't given them to me yet, even though they haven't used it. I would pay them for it, but there's red, blue, black, white, yellow, and then I think there were some trans colors. I'm like, oh man, yeah, we got a lot more colors now.
Oh yeah, it's always interesting, and you definitely, if you come across old lots on Craigslist or whatever, you buy some from eBay, you can see there's a lot more basic brick and stuff like that compared to today's pieces.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But we've definitely got a lot of awesome pieces today, so that's really great for today's builders as well. And you can see it in builds like this. You take full advantage of that. So this is really great. Now, is this one of your bigger builds you've done? It seems like looking through your feed, this was one of the bigger ones.
It's one of the biggest. There were two others that might rival it in size. One of them was an early one that I was really excited over and probably spammed a lot of people for. I'm not proud of that, but I was like 13 at that time, so very immature. But at any rate, that was Dinotopian Parade, and it was almost exactly the same size, but it was a square base, so it might have been slightly larger. And that was something I've been wanting to do for a while, and it probably is a little bit bigger. And the other one was Guittari Research Base 3, and that was a little bit bigger than Dinotopian Parade because it had the same perimeter, but it also had some lime green accents that probably extended it a little bit. So that's probably the biggest one, and then this might be like the third biggest. Then everything else is significantly smaller.
Sure, yeah. But as we've shown, you don't need large size to make a really cool build, so this still turned out really nicely. And then I think the final build we wanted to talk about is actually one that you've kind of thought of as the best build you've done so far. So I'd be interested to hear what makes this stand out as your favorite build that you've done.
I have it right here. And this is my favorite build. There's multiple reasons. It's purple, first of all. You know, that's very important. But another thing is, I had originally built it, and I had built it from about here, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it stops there up, and it's emerging from some mists in a vignette. It has wings and everything. And then I'm like, well, I want to make more of this dragon because I kind of like how it turned out. And so I had to come with an elaborate bricklinking campaign where I got more pieces for these parts right here, pieces for this, and just pieces to fill in the back right here, because before this was all supports and very ugly to look at. But I'm not sure why I justify this as being my favorite build and the best work I've done, but it is, for whatever reason. Probably some kind of psychological reason, but yeah, I really like it. And on a technical note, when the new line of Mixels comes out with those purple 1x2 slopes, I'll probably replace these 2 1x2 tiles right here with those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is still a really great build. The Draken build there, it's very interesting. Obviously, your purple again you use there. That is a neat color to build in. I think it's got that kind of dark about it. It's really interesting to always see builds like that with it. So, are you building more Dragon type builds like that in the future, you think?
Oh, that's funny you should ask. I have something right here. It's not a dragon, but again, it's something where I had built it bursting forth from the ground from about here, and then I decided to give the rest of it the body. And I haven't posted this yet, but I had the hardest time making these legs, and in the end I used some handcuffs with some special brackets on, and that just kind of like anchors these on. And I really like how this came out. And again, it's inspired by the praying mantis, and you can see, mantis claws, all kinds of stuff, angled face. I kind of have like sort of affinity for those. I like building creatures based off them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so some interesting creature builds like that. So those are always neat to see, and again, the color palette is really great that you use with those. Now, I'd be interested to hear, and I'm sure people who follow your builds might know you from your Lego work. Do you have when you aren't building with Lego, what other interests or hobbies do you have?
Well, I like to write, and I usually incorporate that into building too, elaborate backstories and stuff. Also, you do swimming, like walking, kind of fitness stuff. There's also like do-it-yourself, stuff you have to do, home improvement, stuff like that, just helping out. And then I'm looking kind of into like archery and piano too. Those are some useful skills to have, for killing people and also for making music, stuff like that. So,
those blend very well together, I found. Very nice. But yeah, archery is a fun sport to get into as well. So I've done a little of that over the years. So very cool. But
No,
it's all
we're killing deer because, I don't want people thinking I'm a homestyle maniac.
for sure. Very nice. Well, do you have you ever made it to a convention? And if not, do you hope to make it to one someday? Is there any one that you'd really like to make it to in the future?
I haven't made it to a convention ever. Definitely want to make it to one. And probably the most convenient one would be for me to get to would be maybe BrickCon, because I'm relatively closer to it than some of the other conventions out there. But that might not happen in the near future. And if I did go, I'd probably just go as a visitor, not really exhibit anything, because the fees for getting in are kind of astronomical. Even though they do discount it and do something fancy to it, but not yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can be tough to get into some of those conventions. I know, especially if the cost is a problem. But hopefully one day you'll be able to display your work at BrickCon. I'm sure everybody there would love to have you and displaying some of your builds there. So that's really cool. Look forward to that eventually. Now, I'd be interested to hear, as you're only 15, of course. So and we've talked about your limited budget. What have you found is the best way to get pieces? Have you had a strategy over the last couple of years since you really started building? You mentioned Bricklink. Is there anywhere else?
Well, as most informed LEGO people know, lug bulk is the best way to get tons of LEGO, because you have a clear choice of which ones you want, and you can order them in multiples of thousands and whatever. Another case of AFLs being ridiculously rich. But one good way, of course, is pick a brick, and I live pretty far away, actually, from the nearest LEGO store, so it's kind of infrequent that I get to go and get some pick a brick. So you usually have to, save up a considerable amount of money to make it worth your while, and all that. Of course, Bricklink's an excellent way. That's like the best way to get the parts you want from any era in LEGO history. You can get like 10 Jabba the Hutts and make them like battle each other or whatever. Anything you want, really, as long as the sellers have it. Even some parts LEGO doesn't know they've made, which like transparent tentacles and weird stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's just 5 cents.
And now just looking at your
No,
looking
go
at
ahead.
your photo stream, I saw you posted. Sorry, yeah. Looking at your photo stream, I saw recently you posted a pick-a-brick cup that you had kind of filled with a bunch of different parts, and you were talking about pick-a-brick earlier. Is there a certain strategy you take when you go to the wall? What do you look for? Like parts-wise?
Well, you want to be economical, and of course, I must always look for purple. And recently they had a lot of good purple. They had, like a bunch of these. I got about 300 of those. I got some of the 2x3s in purple, and then some 1x1s in purple. And also got some mermaid tails, but we won't talk about that. And there was just the strategy I used. Normally, my local, nearby LEGO store has a policy that allows you to elevate the lid of the dish, the lid of the cup, by about ½ an inch, and there's a gap there, and then they'll tape it down for you. So I usually make long columns that extend from the cup, and that allows me to maximize the amount that I can get in. So I'll build columns like out of the bricks they have there, and you put them all around, and then as long as the cup fits on top and you can like tape it down, you should be good. And then recently, the gaps between those columns, I would fill them with like tons of these. I spent like a good hour packing it, and it was worth it. But yeah, if you don't have that kind of time, then I guess you're kind of not going to get as much. But that's the best way to get a lot.
Definitely evolved as an art over the years, is packing pick-a-brick cups. I know it's interesting to see how certain people do it. There's a lot of strategies that can go into that for sure.
It can get really intense.
And I was kind of irritated to see that they upped the price, at least in my area, by $1. So it's usually $15 and $8, and now it's $9 and $16. So I'm like, well, I might as well get the big one because it's like getting 2 small ones.
And it messed me up too, because you go to the store and I knew the exact price of one pick-a-brick cup with tax, And now what am I have to recalculate? All my equations are broken.
I'm working back out of debt because, like, I can't just go there and say, oh, no, I'm not going to get anything. So I had to get something, and I didn't have enough money for it, so I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, and the real kicker was the increase of the price of the box. You like a box of one part is like $700. That's exponential.
That's expensive now.
Yeah, I know that the boxes of parts have gone up in prices as well. So, yeah, it's getting more expensive, but still cool to do. Have you ever had any odd interactions as you've been filling Pick-a-Brick cups? I know if you spend, an hour filling a Pick-a-Brick cup, a lot of people will come by and maybe look at what you're doing or ask you for tips or something like that.
Oh, well, I had a very scary experience this last time I went. And I usually don't have experiences, but, there's people coming from around, they have their kids, they're like, oh, look at all the Legos. And so, they're like, oh, yeah, let's get some. And they just throw it on the cup. I'm like, ugh, you wasted your money. But I was carefully packing mine, as I said, and this lady next to me was trying to help her very young relative of hers pack some cups, for some reason or other. And they were packing all these parts in, and she had a broken arm. And so whenever, she would turn around, sometimes she'd knock it over, and sometimes, the relative would be messing with it, and he'd knock it over, or he'd get too many, or he'd get too few. And so they were just kind of she was getting very, very frustrated, and I was right next to them. I couldn't go anywhere else. It's there's that little ledge they have with the Pick-a-Brick cups pulling out of the dispenser. I was working there. I didn't have anywhere else to go. And I'm she's swinging her arms around. I'm like, oh my gosh, is she going to knock mine over? It was very terrifying.
A little bit of a close call there, but it seemed to work out in the end at least. So that is interesting. It seems like a lot of people have stories from sitting in Lego stores filling Pick-a-Brick cups.
Oh, yes. And last time I went, the time before that is, I know they have rather lax rules regarding what you can and can't buy there. And the minifig, build your own minifig part, they have all these awesome stuff that it costs ridiculous amounts on Bricklink. So I'm like, can I buy this individual minifigure pie? And they're like, no, but I'll count it as part of your collectible minifigure you're buying. I'm like, why don't you just say that I can buy it? I mean, okay, black market.
Yeah, that's true. That can be annoying sometimes. But now, if you have having spent so much time in the Lego store and everything, spend a lot of time around Lego sets, do you have a dream Lego set that you really want Lego to come out with?
Well, you may be familiar with this set, and that was one of the Lego movie sets, Cloud Cuckoo Palace. And as much as I'm very happy that Lego made it so cheap, $20 is pretty good for that amount of parts, and it has Unikitty, of course, which is the best minifigure ever. But I was hoping they'd make a bigger version of it with maybe 10 Unikitties and some tentacles, maybe in purple. Some clouds. They made out of light bricks, and hopefully they wouldn't fade, because Lego would do something to them to make them not fade. And then some random aliens or whatever. Just whole 9 yards. Maybe make it about $100 worth, more than that. I don't know. Yeah, I missed the whole bandwagon where Lego allowed the LDD, Lego Digital Designer, they allowed you to buy the sets in there, and I know that didn't work out well, so that's kind of a shame.
Yeah, but it would be cool to have some magical white bricks that never fade. I'm sure a lot of builders would enjoy having those from some set in the future, but I don't know if that's ever going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
None of mine are particularly badly faded yet, but just looking at this thing over here, I can see at least 3 different shades of white in this one piece alone, and I'm wondering if it varies by part, but it's kind of terrifying. Gets yellower with age.
Yeah, that can be annoying. Well, now I think to finish it out here, do you have any future builds already planned? I don't know if you have a list you put together or how you work those out that you are thinking for the future builds.
I don't know how other people do it, but I actually do have a list. I have a lot of ideas, so I like to write them down. And I don't want to ruin the surprise for the next 5 years of builds I make by telling you guys all of them. But some of them on here, and I usually forget what I wrote, so it's going to be a surprise to me. Some kind of evil bubble machine of death. Drill hermit crabs with a painter. Some kind of, another planet, dome city. Oh, what else is here? Salacious Crumb from Star Wars, mini version of that. Some kind of orange mech thingy. Oh, I have a whip here.
They're like fortune cookies.
Yes, it's a ruby ring, and it uses Technic, these treads, and I found a way to stabilize them in a circular shape using these ruby pieces instead of stabilizing them from inside as they usually are. So I was probably going to use that in something, but I can't figure out a good use for it yet. So
Okay.
it might take a
So,
while.
something will come to you, I'm sure, but that is an interesting technique, the way you use the rubies.
Oh, someone
Very
else went
nice.
off. Alien wizard, combining fantasy and sci-fi. That's always a good thing.
Because
Leather man,
just a wizard isn't good enough. You need an alien wizard to really make it cool.
yeah, of course. And here I can't read my own handwriting, so I probably better stop before I. Ridiculous. But just here, I have a lot of whips because these are all concepts, just like conceptual stuff. But most of the time, a lot of stuff that I do, I don't actually know what it's gonna be. I just build something like this thing. I use the Mixel's ball joints to make a nice articulation. So this is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 facets to this thing. It's kind of interesting. But 7 is a difficult number to build in when you're using Lego. Like it's even more difficult than using hexagons.
Oh yeah, definitely. But you just keep a lot of concept kind of builds around to work around, and you slowly evolve them into normal builds then?
Usually, and a lot of times what will happen is I'll have a lot of like scraps that I have, and I'll just like combine them all into the concept I have and use them that way. And so that's just kind of like an efficient way to get rid of as many of the things on my desk as possible. Because right now, as chaotic as it may look, this is actually very organized, and usually it's just like carpeted. And yes.
It's creative clutter.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. When your desk is really messy, it's just creative clutter. That's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah. But I have to build on the floor because all that stuff's on the desk, so I can't build at the desk,
Move spaces then. But I think it all works out in the end, and it definitely shows in your great builds. So I think that'll about wrap it up for us. It was great having you on the show, Aaron. It was awesome seeing some more of your builds and hearing about some of your techniques that you use.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Yeah, it was great talking with you. And so is the best place for people to follow you then on Flickr?
Definitely. Because,
Okay.
yeah.
Then we'll make sure to include a link to your Flickr page in the description so people can make sure to follow you there and keep up to date with all your latest builds. And Matthew and I recently got back from Brickworld, so we're posting a lot of videos from there as well. So I definitely encourage you to subscribe to the YouTube page to keep up to date with all of our Brickworld interviews and all of our latest episodes here on the show as well. So encourage you to subscribe, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.